Good day, everybody, and on today's video, we're going to talk about the frequently asked questions that we get on our YouTube channel regarding to Malaysian property and Malaysian real estate. Our YouTube channel has grown quite strong over the past few months. We have a lot of new subscribers, and thank you everyone for subscribing and for sharing your comments. So today, we're going to try and answer these questions, which I think are the more frequently asked questions that we get on the YouTube channel, and we hope that by answering these questions, we can shed some light on the misconceptions that they have on Malaysia, on the properties in Malaysia, and as well maybe answer some questions for maybe some topics which I didn't cover very well in the past. So let's start with question number one. Who are all the people buying property in JB? Because in Singapore today, people still, really? Got people go JB to buy property? Who are all these people and what are they doing? Why are they buying property in JB? So let me try and answer these questions. Generally, in my experience in the past 6 months, we are seeing three groups of people. The first group is what I call the retirees. These are people who are in their 50s or 60s. They are already retired or in the process of retiring or retiring pretty soon. And the reason why they buy JB is basically as a way to as a retirement home, right? To a way to reduce the cost of living, because as you know, Singapore cost of living is quite high, and they hope by going to JB they can reduce some cost of living. Because you know Singapore next year, 2024 GST will go up to 9%. So people are worried about inflation and how this will affect the cost of living. So with their retirement money or the CPF funds or some property money they made from their properties in Singapore, they go and buy one more property in JB to use as a retirement home, right? And these people generally they're a bit familiar with Malaysia. They go to JB often, maybe once a month or twice a month, so they somewhat know how JB works, right? And they think that things are cheaper there and they can stretch their dollar further, right? So especially in current exchange rates, it's quite favorable to spend your money, your retirement money in JB. So this is group number one, right? Group number two is the investors. So property investors are looking at JB because MRT is coming, right? MRT is coming to JB in 2026, another 3 years from now, right? And with that, and due to the big price difference between Singapore and JB, right, investors are trying to see that whether they can make some money off a property in JB. Of course, rentals in JB are also growing very strong now due to high demand from Singapore. Since Singapore prices are high, so a lot of people go to JB to rent. So rental in JB is not so bad now, especially if you buy near immigration, near the upcoming MRT to Singapore. So investors are trying to look at that. And Singapore, and of course JB property is quite affordable, right? And they don't have to invest a lot of money to test this JB property investment. So we are seeing the comeback of property investors from Singapore into JB as well. The third group are what I call planning to retire in JB but haven't retired yet. Okay, so these are people who are normally in their 30s or 40s, haven't retired yet, right? But they are buying in JB because they may want to retire or intend to retire in JB in the future. So they buy property in JB now because they think buy now is cheaper than buy later, because purely on inflation and construction costs alone, JB property today cannot be the same price as JB property 10 or 20 years from now. So they buy now, and also because when they're young, they can take loan from the bank, so they can leverage. So they buy this property in JB. In the meantime, they rent out first, right? Or maybe use it as a weekend house, or maybe give it to Airbnb operator to manage in the meantime, right? So this is the third group. We see quite a fair bit of these people as well, right? So this is the third category. Now, whether these people are Singaporean, Malaysian, or any other nationality, we see quite a lot of bit. I mean, Singaporeans, Malaysians in Singapore also are working in Singapore also. The key thing is that they all earn Singapore dollar. Because you earn Singapore dollar, then you generally have the financial capability to buy some of these properties in JB. And of course, you must understand for Malaysians who work in Singapore, it's quite expensive to buy in Singapore, right? You could earn $5,000-$6,000 in Singapore. Also, you cannot afford to buy property in Singapore, right? Because HDB is not cheap and there's a lot of restrictions. Private property even more expensive. So for people like that who are not Singaporean, right, they don't have access to BTO. They normally don't have so much CPF compared to true blue Singaporean. These people buy JB is a very logical thing. And for Singaporeans, of course, it's a way to, like I said, to stretch their funds, because property investment options in Singapore have become more and more limited due to regulation. So JB becomes the next viable option, especially as MRT is coming. Number two, can I retire in JB full time? Now, if you intend to spend your retirement 365 days a year in JB, or majority of your time, let's say 70-80% of your time in Malaysia, then it's advisable to apply for the Malaysia My Second Home visa, right? As I outlined in my earlier videos, the MM2H program is the correct way to do it, right? But of course, right now, MM2H is quite difficult to get, I understand. But don't worry about that. The Malaysian government has said they're going to loosen or simplify the MM2H program soon, right? And the MM2H program, we are waiting for it. It could be announced anytime this month in October, maybe November, right? But the MM2H program, when it comes out, it should be a lot simpler to get, and we hope that this will apply to most Singaporean retirees as well. Now, if you are what we call a weekend retirement, right? That means you only spend, some days in JB, some days in Singapore, then it's not so bad. You can probably still go ahead with your tourist visa approach, right? Today we have a tourist visa, 30 days, right? And I think lots of Singaporeans are actually doing that today, right? Where they go in a few days Singapore, a few days JB, they in out in that sense, right? 3 days here, 4 days here, 3 days here, 4 days there, or 1 week here, 1 week there. Then I think Malaysia immigration is quite lenient to this category, and you can do that without applying for a Malaysia my second home. So this is the scenario which I think most people are doing today, because anyhow Malaysia and Singapore are so near, JB and Singapore are so near. So if you are only retiring in that sense, in that kind of format, that means a few days JB, a few days Singapore, you don't spend, your time spent is roughly 50-50, Singapore and JB, then I think the tourist visa is still okay, right? You should be able to go through most of the time without much trouble. So it all depends on your perspective of how much time you intend to retire in JB. But the reason why I think most people retire in JB anyway is because you don't want to lose access to Singapore. Your family, your friends, social services, they're all in Singapore still. So by doing that, that's the reason why you spend in JB, and that's why you retire in JB, and that's why you still go back to Singapore quite often. So you go back to Singapore quite often, you still have property in Singapore that you can stay in Singapore, whether your own house or your children's house or other relatives' house, or even if you just rent in Singapore, or you have one room in your HDB and you rent out other rooms, right? You can still go back to Singapore. Then I think it's no problem. You should be able to retire 50-50 in that sense. Anything more is safer to apply for Malaysia, my second home. Question number 3, how is the property oversupply in JB? Now, probably many of you have read about it in the media before. Up to 10 years ago, you would have heard of this term, the oversupply of property in JB. And this is true, especially for high-end condominium in JB. I think lots of people who bought high-end condos in JB from maybe up to 10 years ago probably lost money, still losing money, because there was an oversupply. There is an oversupply. The oversupply is still here, if you ask me, in pockets of JB, where a lot of developers have not fully sold their stock. And this oversupply problem is what made property prices in JB didn't do well, right, in the past 5 to 10 years. And we will all admit it, there's nothing to hide here, right? And but if you ask my opinion, especially in the last 6 months to 9 months, I think property developers in JB have been able to clear down their stock. A lot of these developers have been able to sell previously when they were not able to sell. So I think this oversupply situation is balancing out. I mean, trust me, if you don't believe me, I'm telling you now, this oversupply situation is balancing out right now. And I think owners from 10 years ago will soon reach a situation, maybe in 6 to 24 months from now, that they find that they can have good market value for their property again. Now, watch my words. I think this is going to happen next 6 to 24 months. That the JB property market will balance itself out, and owners will see the light at the end of the tunnel, especially those who bought 5 to 10 years ago. The other thing that I want to say is that the good news is also there's been very little incoming supply. When you have an oversupply situation, you don't want new supply to come in, because that creates even more oversupply, right? So the good news is, because of bad market sentiment, a lot of property developer don't dare to launch new condo in JB in the past 5 years, especially, right? So that is healthy for the market, and we have seen the market balancing itself out. So no new supply gives an opportunity for the current supply to clear, right? And that's important. And I think it's been very healthy for the JB market, and it's good news for the JB market overall. So there's been very minimal supply, good news. I think I also talk about the Forest City. Now, many people like to use Forest City as a benchmark for what is bad or what's going on in JB. Now, Forest City, first of all, I asked all of you to go and visit Forest City in the first place. Okay, Forest City is in a very, very remote location of Johor. Very, very remote. It's like Singapore asks you to go to Pulau Tekong. After Pulau Tekong, go and build one more island. Okay, it's damn far. A lot of Singaporeans will never go there, right? Forest City, I think a lot of Singaporeans have never been to Forest City also, if you ask me, right? It's a very, very remote. And Forest City is an outlier, right? To put it simply, right? And it's the problem with Forest City is that it was not natural property demand in the first place, right? If you guys know the background, I think Country Garden, the chairman at the time, he had this dream to build a freehold, sea view, smart city, right? He came to Malaysia, Johor, they let him do it in the middle of the ocean, right? But the thing is, nobody asked for property over there. There is no demand for property in that location, but they went ahead and built those islands, built those condos, right? And today there's very little occupancy in Forest City. I mean, there is some, but not very high, right? And Forest City is always used in the media as a as a punching bag or something to say bad about JB. But I always tell people, if you remove Forest City from statistics, I think the JB property market is a lot more healthier than it looks, right? And that is the thing that I'm trying to tell people. Don't use Forest City as a poster boy for the rest of JB. It's simply wrong, and it's a bad sample to use for. Okay. Malaysia property cannot make money one lah. How can make money? Okay, I beg to differ. I've been buying property in Malaysia since 2007. Now, the Malaysian property market had a very strong bull run from 2005 to 2013, 2014. That period, I think a lot of people who buy property in that period in Malaysia make money. 2005 to 2014, right? I met people, Singaporeans who make money, who bought during that period as well in Penang, KL, Johor, right? You bought that time, you would have made money because the cycle was in our favor. Then I think after 2014 onwards until today, we are in a down cycle where oversupply, maybe and the property market didn't do as well, and a lot of people who buy property in that period lose money. And I think the problem with Singaporeans is a lot of Singaporeans who bought JB bought during the peak around 2013, 2014, and because of that, they lost money, right? And unfortunately, this cycle in Malaysia has been quite long. Part of it is due to the Malaysian elections in 2018, right? In 2018, the Malaysian government changed. There was the first time it happened in Malaysia's 60-year history. The government changed. There was a bit of political instability. Some things happened, some decisions made that happen that affected the Johor property market. And of course, after that, we had the COVID pandemic in 2020 that stretched the downturn even further. I think 10 years is very long for a property down cycle, right? Unusually long, right? And if you ask me, we are seeing signs that the property market is recovering again, especially as now the political situation has stabilized a lot. And also the oversupply situation in Johor has also stabilized quite a lot as the market balances out, as I mentioned earlier. But definitely, you can make money in Malaysian property. Is a part of the problem today is very much related to the property cycle and timing. Can I sell my property in Malaysia without the strata title? Now, strata title in Malaysia typically takes 2 to 3 years to be issued. Unlike Singapore, strata title is normally out within the year. Malaysia, the process is slower, takes within 2 to 3 years. But the answer is yes. Actually, you can sell your property without strata title. I don't know why some owners get very worried about this. Hey, I got no title, I got no title. But you can sell property in Malaysia anytime, right? The moment you got keys, generally, if you got keys in Malaysia, you have to wait until you get keys. Once you have keys, you can sell your property anytime. There is a legal process in Malaysia where your lawyer will be able to sell your property even without strata title. Of course, with strata title is preferred, right? But no strata title also can sell, right? I have sold many properties without strata title before. It's not a major problem, right? It's just another process for the lawyer, and they can definitely do it, right? Delays in strata title happened recently because of COVID pandemic, so everything was stretched for that 2 year period because nobody was working, right, during pandemic, right? But I think most projects in Malaysia will get their strata title eventually. The only time that a strata title will not be issued is if the developer go bankrupt. If a developer go bankrupt and the title is not there, then that may be a problem because it's the developer's job to apply for the title. So generally, if you're buying with a big developer, I don't think this is a big problem because big developer will not go bankrupt. There is some risk sometimes you buy small developer if you don't know their financial condition, but big developer, generally this is not the case, right? And strata title, like I said, you can sell with or without strata title, is not a problem. How does strata landed works? Now, you may have heard the strata landed. What is strata landed? Yeah, Malaysia has something called strata landed, right? So in Singapore, we're familiar with strata title for condo because you got common area, right? Things like swimming pool, gym, function rooms are common area. That's why it's strata, right? And individual title, which is normally like landed property. So Malaysia same, right? There's this concept of strata condo and strata and individual title. for landed is the same. Singapore, Malaysia, I think hardly any difference, right? Now in Malaysia, we also have strata landed. Typically, these are projects by EcoWorld. EcoWorld tend to do strata landed, where the landed property is in an estate, right, and it's gated guarded. And in gated guarded, because you have the roads inside your landed estate, the roads and the gardens within your landed estate are also common area because they belong to the owners. They are not managed by the government or by the city council. It's managed by the owners. So in this case, it's the strata landed community take care of the upkeep of the strata, the landed area, the common area. So the roads inside your strata landed, the gardens, the swimming pool, in the clubhouse, if any, within the strata landed is also common area, similar to a strata condo. That's the only difference, right? And like I said, in this case, all the area within your landed estate is managed by the strata community, not by the city council. How about property on reclaimed land? Now, reclamation of land is common in Singapore. It's also common in Malaysia, especially in Johor. Penang is also doing it soon. Reclamation is actually not new. Actually, it's done in Japan, China. It's also done in what you call parts of Europe, right? So land reclamation is not exactly a new thing, right? This technology has been here, I think, for 30, 40, or even longer, 50, 60 years also have, right? This technology of land reclamation. So people are naturally concerned whether reclaimed land is safe. Now, as far as I can tell, as far as my research can show me, the worst thing that has happened so far to reclaim land property is sinking, right? Which is the land sinks a little bit, a couple of inches, right? Yeah, and you don't like it, because you feel like it's sinking, right? But sinking, no collapse, nothing is collapsed so far. And I think the biggest risk is normally if you're in an earthquake area, but Malaysia is not in an earthquake zone. Singapore is also not in an earthquake zone, right? Even in Japan, also with reclamation, also in earthquake zone, none of their reclaimed properties have actually fallen down. So in that sense, I think reclamation properties are quite safe because as part of the reclamation process, your piling has to go all the way to the ground. So it's not easy because you have a direct connection to the ground. So it's only normally the sediment soil on top that you worry sink or not, but normally your property will not fall down as a result of that. So it's a bit technical thing. I'm not an engineer. I can't answer the question fully in that sense. But in my experience, as far as I can tell, in the last 40, 50 years, we haven't had any major incident with properties on reclaimed property, be it Singapore or Malaysia. Okay, if you have other concerns, I think like for example R&Fprincesscove or even most Danga Bay for that matter, the reclamation is done in the Johor, the Straits of Johor. Now the Straits of Johor is actually quite shallow. Yeah, I think it's barely 18 meters deep now. 18 meters is actually quite shallow. So the reclamation is more like a river reclamation. Okay. Right, reclaim to river, not reclaim to ocean, right? So in that sense, I don't think properties on reclaimed land in that sense in Malaysia are dangerous because the reclamation is actually very, very shallow only in comparison to other types of reclamation. Like in Singapore, you reclaim Marina Bay is reclaimed into the sea, right? Like East Coast is reclaimed into the sea, right? Deep sea, right? But in Johor, reclamation is towards Singapore, which is actually a very shallow reclamation if you want to compare. Do locals prefer to buy landed property in Malaysia? Do local Malaysians prefer to buy landed property in Malaysia? Answer, of course, is yes lah. I mean, Singapore also yes, right? If you are Singaporean and you got money, you also want to buy landed property, am I right? Why? If you got the same amount of money, you most likely buy a landed compared to a condo in Singapore. Same. So Malaysia also same, right? But and so it's true that if you are a Johorian, right, very likely you prefer to buy landed in Malaysia versus condo. The question is whether you can afford it, because even landed in Johor today is getting more and more expensive. We just saw a launch in Johor Land in Dato On this weekend, 800,000, 900,000 for a terrace, right? And even the cheaper terraces are very far away. They're like 1 hour drive away from city center, right? And also 700,000, 800,000, right? From town. If you want cheap landed in JB today, I think they are quite remote, more than an hour's drive, right? And if you use trends in KL or Penang, right? In KL or Penang, right? Same thing, right? If you got money, right, you should buy landed. Okay, but can afford on it. And are you okay with the traffic? Because some of the more affordable landed are quite far away, right? If you work in KL town and you stay in the landed property, you have to spend an hour and a half maybe to travel, right, to work. And if you're caught on a bad day, raining, traffic jam, you can be more than 2 hours getting home. So it's very common for people in KL, Penang today to stay in condo, right? That lifestyle is accepted because of traffic, because of congestion, right? And condo is nearer to town, cheaper quantum, right? Lower quantum, right? Landed maybe cost $1 million plus ringgit, but I can buy a condo for less, right? And I can get access to amenities, convenience of shopping mall, public transport is normally better for some of these condos in town. So it's a lot acceptable today in KL and Penang to buy a condo nearer to town. And I think this trend is happening in JB as well. You can see today, even condo sales in JB is improving a lot because a lot of locals realize, hey, compare 800,000 buy landed far away, I can 500,000, I can buy a 3 bedroom in town, right, or 2 bedroom in town. Yeah, I might as well buy a 2 bedroom in town, right, and I save a lot on traffic, cost of petrol, transportation, right? And it's very common now, I think, and this trend will happen in JB for sure, right? So it's a matter of city evolution, urban sprawl, some of the terms. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say, and how much JB as a city is growing, right? And to me, this inflection point where JB becomes more like KL in that sense in terms of where people's preference on landed housing, I think that will change also in times to come, right? It's a question about money, how much time you're willing to spend in traffic, right? And how much you want to exchange in for conveniences living nearer to town. Are there other condos in JB that are also walking distance to the CIQ and the MRT other than R&F Princess Cove? I said, yeah, Ryan, you keep talking about R&F Princess Cove. You say R&F Princess Cove is near to MRT, near to immigration. Are there other options, right? If I don't like R&F, okay. Yeah, of course, I think maybe the five, I think Twin Tower, Tri Tower, Coronation Square, View on Summer Place, Sky Habitat, Sky Suites. I think these are the six most obvious ones. Did I miss any? Maybe Quayside JBCC. I think these are the 6-7 projects which are so-called walking distance, right? But they are also what they call unsheltered. I think for most of the cases today, their walk is unsheltered, not covered, or the walkway is not built yet. And I think in Malaysian weather, weather is one thing, the rain and the sun. The other thing is the pathway, the walkway also not there. Sometimes if you could be 200 meters walking distance, but no walkway, you walk on the road, like not safe. So it's a bit. That's why I still prefer R&F in the end, because R&F has a covered sheltered walkway all the way, a big mall, right? Big project, right? So you have a size. Even if you buy a 1 bedroom, you can walk the entire 20 acres of the project, right? And it feels good, that you get more value for your money, right? In that sense. So that's my answer why I prefer R&F. And of course, if you want to buy below R1 million, R&F can still buy below R1 million, whereas all these other projects I think generally are fully sold by developer, right? And you may not be able to buy as a foreigner unless you're willing to pay above R1 million. And market value is also another question, because market valuation is changing very fast now. You may not be able to get the market valuation for the property that you buy, but if you don't, yeah, that's another topic, right? Maybe I explain another day. But yeah, this is why I feel R&F is better. But yeah, those are the 6-7 projects I think that if you want to buy near MRT, these are the options. You can go and see them, but I think a lot of people will agree with me that I think R&F is better. Okay, final question. How can you compare Singapore and JB property price? It's the apple and orange, not same. And I get this question quite a lot also. And then people will say, hey, KLCC 1000 PSF also can buy, so better buy KLCC. I say, but KLCC and JB and Singapore is two very different animal to compare. Like KLCC is like 400 km away, right? And very far, and has less economic correlation to Singapore. Whereas JB is just next to Singapore, got MRT coming, right? You can cross to JB today on a good time, under an hour, right, from Singapore. A lot more economic correlation between JB and Singapore versus Singapore and KL. People say, hey, Ryan, the people say, Ryan, hey, all the Singaporean come to JB to buy, they take the Sing dollar divide by 3, and wow, everything in JB very cheap. How can you compare? That's not the correct way to compare. But that's normal, right? You go shopping, if you go to Japan, you convert to yen. Your yen convert back to ringgit, right? You go to Europe, you also convert from euro back to Sing dollar. People always compare back in your original currency, You're not going to compare with some other US dollar, right? For example. Yeah. So it's very normal, right? And actually, it's not wrong, right? If I'm a Sing dollar earner, right, and I work in Singapore, I earn Sing dollar, right? Yeah, it's only natural for me to compare with Sing dollar, ringgit compared to Sing dollar, right? And in that perspective, right, because MRT going to JB, and I can go to JB next time via MRT, I can use Sing dollar to spend in JB. But that's what I'm doing anyway. So it's not wrong for me to compare. Same thing with rental. Why do people rent in JB rather than rent in Singapore? Because they earn Sing dollar, They compare Singapore expensive, JB cheaper. I stay JB lah. That's what they're doing, right? So nothing wrong, right? If you can compare that for rental, then what's wrong to compare that for property price, right? For the sale price. So I think it's not unusual, right? Singapore and JB have a lot more economic correlation compared to Singapore and KL. So we will never compare against KL price, right? In fact, it's those KL projects come to Singapore that I think is not logical comparison. You say, oh, KLCC 1,000 per square foot, so cheap to compare to Singapore. But yeah, so it's KL ma, you're 400 km away. It's logical to compare JB to Singapore, yes. Compare KL to Singapore, no point, right? And for Singaporeans to say that, hey, then we don't even compare to Malaysia, another country. But my point is like this: you got MRT coming, okay, to Singapore and JB in 3 years' time, 2026, right? And you know that, I'll give you an example. Recently there was a government land sales in Woodlands. Okay, CDL won the site, $900 for the land, right? They will probably launch around 2,000. New condo in Woodlands South, this Woodlands South MRT, 2,000 PSF Sing. JB condo what? 350 Sing per square foot, right? Per square foot, 2,000 Sing per square foot, 99 year Singapore, 350 Sing per square foot JB, 3 MRT stop. When MRT come to JB, you think logical or not? 2,300 like, is almost 10 times. Okay, so I know Singapore sure more expensive. This is for sure. Singapore is the number one financial hub of Southeast Asia, number one talent magnet. I talk about this many times. So people always prefer Singapore first. If can always buy Singapore first, stay Singapore first, I understand, right? But 2,000 PSF to 300 PSF, like a bit, 3 MRT stop, like a bit, something wrong, right? Even if you take resale, right, like Park Rosewood in Woodlands is also 1,000 PSF, but 99 year and already more than 10 years old, 80 over years condo in Singapore, not near MRT one, compared to JB freehold 300 PSF near MRT one, 1,300 PSF, also something wrong. If JB from 300 become 500 PSF Sing, is already a big capital gain increase, which is what I'm trying to explain to people here, make people aware of that why JB is still a logical property investment destination, right, for property investors here. So this is how I compare, right? I hope you understand the logic. So thank you very much for watching my video today. I hope these 10 questions answered some of the key things on your mind and clarified some of the misconceptions that you may have. Feel free to comment below, leave me some feedback about what my answers were. And if you have more questions, you can also drop in the comments below. Thank you. Do like, share this video with others who may be keen to find out more about living in Malaysia, buying in Malaysia. Subscribe to my channel as well. All your likes, shares, and subscriptions are very valuable and help us keep this channel going. Keep us motivated to share more. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.